Rick Martel isn't a name you hear as much as Hulk Hogan or Bret Hart. But back in the day, he was right up there with the best. He wasn't the loudest guy in the room, and he didn't need crazy outfits or over-the-top gimmicks to stand out. What made him different was how smooth he was in the ring. He made wrestling look easy, like it was second nature, and fans noticed. Whether he was playing the clean-cut good guy or strutting around as the model, Martel knew how to get a reaction. He was a world champion, a tag team star, and someone who brought real style and skill to the ring. Wrestlers respected him, fans cheered him, and you'd think a career like his would automatically land him in the WWE Hall of Fame. But here's the twist. He said no. That's right. Rick Martel turned down a Hall of Fame induction. No big speech, no final moment under the lights, just silence. In a world where most wrestlers dream of that final honor, Martel walked away from it. And to this day, hardly anyone knows why. So what would make a wrestling legend reject the biggest spotlight of his life? Was it a personal reason? Something with WWE? Or maybe he just wanted to move on? In this video, we're going to uncover the real story behind Rick Martel's decision. From his early days to his biggest matches, all the way to the moment he said no thanks to the Hall of Fame, we've got it all. If you thought you knew everything about Martel, think again. The truth is more surprising than you'd expect. Rick Martel's journey into wrestling started long before he became a household name. Born in Quebec City, Canada, in 1956, Rick was introduced to the business at a young age. His older brother Michel, already involved in wrestling, brought him into the world of ropes, crowds, and endless travel. But from the start, Rick stood out, not just because of his athleticism, but because of how naturally he took to the craft. He was still a teenager when he had his first match, and even then, it was clear he had something special. Martel quickly developed a reputation for being fast, technical, and reliable. He didn't rely on brute strength. He used timing, movement, and strategy. As he moved through the Canadian wrestling circuit, he impressed promoters and veterans alike. By the late 1970s, his skill caught the attention of American audiences, and soon, Rick was performing in promotions across the US, Japan, and the Pacific Islands. His early successes included winning tag team titles with various partners, showcasing his ability to work in sync with others and adjust to different styles. Whether in singles matches or tag bouts, he brought energy and intelligence to every performance. Fans appreciated his clean-cut look, his respectful attitude, and most of all, his ability to put on a great match night after night. But it wasn't until the early 1980s that Martel truly broke through. In 1984, he captured the AWA World Heavyweight Championship, one of the biggest titles in the world at the time. Holding that belt meant you were trusted to lead a promotion, and Rick carried that weight with pride. He defended the title across territories, battling names like Nick Bockwinkel and Stan Hansen, proving he could go toe-to-toe with anyone. And his run as AWA champion didn't just boost his career, it earned him global recognition. He became a star in Japan and Europe, expanding his fan base well beyond North America. Unlike many wrestlers who stuck to one region, Rick embraced the global grind, working in different countries, adapting to new crowds, and building a reputation as a true professional. In 1987, Martel joined the World Wrestling Federation and quickly made an impact. He teamed up with Tito Santana to form Strike Force, a duo known for their speed, teamwork, and ability to rally the crowd. The team clicked instantly, and it wasn't long before they won the WWF Tag Team Championship by defeating the Hart Foundation. Strike Force was a breath of fresh air. Two clean-cut, athletic guys who brought fast-paced action and real chemistry. Their time as champions was short but memorable. Injuries and storyline shifts eventually led to their split, and Martel shocked fans by turning heel and walking out on Santana during a match. That moment marked a turning point. He was no longer the smiling fan favorite. He was evolving. Out of that betrayal came the model Rick Martel, a persona that allowed him to explore arrogance, style, and ego in a way few wrestlers could. He strutted to the ring in designer gear, sprayed his cologne arrogance in his opponents' faces, and made vanity his weapon. It was a complete shift in character, and fans loved to hate him. By the late 80s and early 90s, Martel had cemented his place as both a technical wizard and a compelling character. He had transformed from a quiet young athlete into one of the most versatile performers of his time. The early part of his career laid the foundation, not just for success in the ring, but for the respect he earned backstage. He wasn't just another wrestler, he was a craftsman. By the early 2000s, Rick Martel had long since stepped away from the spotlight. Though he wasn't making regular TV appearances or jumping into the ring anymore, fans still remembered him. From his days with Strikeforce to his time flaunting arrogance as the model, Martel had carved out a respected place in wrestling history. And when WWE started inducting legends into their Hall of Fame, many naturally expected Martel's name would be called. It wasn't just fans who thought he deserved it. Wrestlers, commentators, and even industry insiders believed Martel had more than earned his spot. He was reliable, well-liked behind the scenes, and brought something unique to the ring. He didn't burn bridges, he wasn't involved in scandals, and his in-ring record spoke for itself. His mix of athleticism, professionalism, and character work made him a solid candidate by any standard. So when rumors began swirling that WWE had reached out to Martel with an invitation to join the Hall of Fame, the buzz felt real. It wasn't just hopeful talk. It was backed by interviews and quiet confirmations that he had been offered a spot. But then came the surprise. Martel turned it down. Fans were confused. Why would someone walk away from that kind of recognition? For many wrestlers, the Hall of Fame is more than just an award. It's closure. It's a final curtain call. A chance to hear their name chanted one more time. For Martel to decline that opportunity raised a lot of questions. The most common assumption was health. In interviews over the years, Martel had spoken about lingering injuries from his career. He'd suffered a serious back injury in WCW that ended his time in the ring. That injury didn't just slow him down, it permanently changed his physical condition. Some thought he may not have wanted to appear in public if he wasn't at his best. He had always taken pride in how he looked and moved. Maybe he didn't want fans to see a version of him that didn't match their memories. Others speculated that it had to do with timing. Martel had stepped away from the wrestling world almost completely after his WCW run ended in the late 90s. He didn't do many conventions, interviews, or public appearances. It was as if he closed that chapter of his life on his own terms and didn't want to reopen it just for a one-night tribute. There's also the possibility that he simply wasn't interested in the pomp and circumstance. Some wrestlers crave the spotlight their whole careers. Others see the Hall of Fame as a corporate move, a television product more than a personal honor. Martel may have been in the latter group. His career was built on respect, not attention. Maybe he felt he didn't need a plaque or a ring to validate his legacy. Interestingly, WWE has never publicly addressed the matter, and Martel himself hasn't shared the full reason for his decision. That silence has only deepened the mystery. It's rare for someone to turn down the Hall of Fame, especially when their name still carries weight with fans. Still, his absence from the ceremony has done nothing to dim his legacy. If anything, it's made fans talk more about him. The decision to decline has kept him relevant in a strange way, turning what would have been a quick speech into a lasting conversation. Whatever his reasons, Rick Martel stayed true to himself, and that's something you can't fake in an industry built on performance. He may not have taken the bow, but he left his mark. When Rick Martel quietly stepped away from the ring, he didn't follow the usual playbook. While many wrestlers stay connected to the business through signings, podcasts, or backstage roles, Martel chose a different path. He simply moved on. No grand farewell, no major send-off, just a clean break from the industry that had shaped so much of his life. After retiring, he returned to Canada and focused on things outside of wrestling. For years, he lived a relatively private life. avoiding the spotlight and rarely speaking publicly about his time in the business. He wasn't chasing attention or trying to recapture past fame. He seemed content, leaving it behind. For fans used to seeing wrestlers hold on to the limelight, this was unexpected. But for Martel, it made sense. He had always carried himself with a certain calmness and class, even during his most flamboyant moments as the model. That same quiet confidence followed him into retirement. Martel explored different business ventures after wrestling. At one point, he worked in real estate, helping people find homes rather than pinning opponents. It was a world far removed from body slams and entrance themes, but he approached it with the same focus and professionalism that defined his in-ring career. There wasn't a need to prove anything. He had already done that. Physically, he dealt with the wear and tear that most wrestlers face after decades in the ring. His back injury in WCW had left lasting damage, and while he didn't talk about it much, it was clear that he needed to take better care of himself moving forward. That may have played a role in his decision to stay off the road and skip high-profile events. The grind of wrestling takes a toll, and for someone who always valued performance, showing up when he wasn't at his best might have felt wrong. Despite staying out of the public eye, Martel never lost the respect of fans or peers. When he did make the occasional appearance, like a rare autograph session or a short interview, he was greeted with warmth and gratitude. People remembered the matches, the charisma, and the way he made everything look so smooth inside the ropes. His fans hadn't forgotten, and neither had the industry. Some younger wrestlers have named him as an influence, even without ever sharing the ring with him. His style, technical, smart, and clean, continues to show up in today's generation of performers. That legacy lives on, whether he's in the spotlight or not. Martel's post-wrestling life has been quiet by design, but it's also been purposeful. He stayed true to who he is, a man who gave everything to his craft and then knew when to walk away. In a business where it's easy to get lost in the noise, Rick Martel found peace in silence. And maybe, in the end, that says more about him than any Hall of Fame speech ever could. When news spread that Rick Martel had turned down an induction into the WWE Hall of Fame, it didn't create a media storm, but it did raise eyebrows across the wrestling world. Among fans and fellow wrestlers alike, the reaction was a mix of curiosity, confusion, and quiet respect. This wasn't a case of someone being overlooked. Martel had been invited, and yet, he chose not to step into the spotlight one last time. Within the industry, Martel's decision was met with understanding by many who knew him personally. Wrestlers who had worked alongside him in the 80s and 90s described him as humble, focused, and deeply professional. He wasn't someone who sought praise or attention, even during his most successful years. For those who shared locker rooms with him, the choice to pass on a Hall of Fame moment didn't feel like a snub. It felt like something only Rick would do. Several legends came forward in interviews and podcasts to express their admiration for Martel's career. They spoke of his smooth style, his ability to tell a story in the ring without saying a word, and his rare blend of athleticism and timing. Bret Hart, in particular, once described Martel as one of the most underrated technical wrestlers of his generation. Coming from a technician like Hart, that meant something. Fans on forums and social media shared a different kind of tribute. Instead of focusing on the mist ceremony, many revisited his classic matches, his tag team battles with Strikeforce, his solo run as the model, and even his early days as AWA World Champion. Highlight reels circulated, and fans posted memories of watching Martel perform live. It was as if the absence from the Hall of Fame reignited people's appreciation for what he had already given. Interestingly, the longer Martel stayed out of the Hall of Fame, the more it added to his mystique. Some fans began to view him as a quiet rebel, someone who walked away on his own terms and never looked back. In a business where most retirements are temporary and comebacks are expected, Martel's steady absence became almost symbolic, an unspoken statement that not every story needs a final chapter in front of a crowd. WWE, for its part, never pushed the issue publicly. The company has inducted countless superstars over the years, but in Martel's case, they've remained silent about his refusal. That silence only added to the intrigue. Was it out of respect, or was it part of a bigger story that simply never made it to the surface? Regardless, the response from the industry remained positive. Wrestlers old and new continued to mention Martel's name when asked about underrated stars. Trainers pointed to his matches as examples of how to work smart, not just hard. And fans kept his legacy alive by sharing memories, clips, and stories. Rick Martel may have skipped the spotlight, but he didn't vanish. His decision might have surprised people, but it never changed the impact he made. In the end, his legacy didn't need a speech. It was already written in the way people remember him. Even though Rick Martel has been off TV for decades, his influence can still be felt in today's wrestling world. While his name doesn't come up as often as some of his more flamboyant peers, those who know the sport recognize just how much of a blueprint he left behind. You can see it in the current generation of wrestlers who pride themselves on clean technique, smooth pacing, and smart in-ring psychology. Traits Martel mastered long before many fans even started watching. Modern stars like Chad Gable and Johnny Gargano, who blend athleticism with storytelling, are part of the wrestling evolution that Martel helped shape. While they may not be copies of him, the fundamentals that made Martel special are now taught in wrestling schools around the world. Things like footwork, timing, and controlling match tempo. Those aren't flashy, but they win respect, and Martel was one of the best at them. Beyond the ring, Martel's decision to walk away and stay away has given him a different kind of mystique. In a business known for comebacks and constant reinvention, he stayed retired. No returns, no reunion matches, no dramatic send-offs. That silence has made fans more curious, not less. It's rare, and in its own way, admirable. Even without a Hall of Fame ring, his body of work speaks volumes. Hardcore fans still trade tapes and digital clips of his best performances. Trainers still use his matches as examples of how to work smart, and wrestlers still name-drop him when asked who doesn't get the credit they deserve. Rick Martel may not be front and center in the WWE's video packages or year-end tributes, but his fingerprint is everywhere. His legacy wasn't built on hype. It was built on consistency, class, and skill. And that kind of legacy lasts. Rick Martel's story isn't like most wrestling legends. He didn't end his career with a tearful retirement speech. He didn't pop up years later in documentaries or return for nostalgia-fueled matches. And he didn't chase a Hall of Fame ring just to hear one last cheer from the crowd. Instead, Martel chose something different. He walked away quietly, on his own terms, and stayed true to himself long after the cameras stopped rolling. In a world where attention is currency and fame is never enough, Martel's decision to reject the Hall of Fame makes his legacy even more interesting. He wasn't bitter. He wasn't burned by the business. He simply felt no need to step back into the spotlight. That kind of peace is rare, especially in professional wrestling, where the chase for validation often outlives the career itself. What makes Rick Martel's journey powerful isn't just what he did. It's what he didn't do. He didn't let ego steer his decisions. He didn't let injury define him. He didn't trade privacy for recognition. That quiet strength is something we don't talk about enough. Sometimes, greatness doesn't come from chasing the stage. It comes from knowing when to leave it. And maybe that's why his legacy keeps growing. He's become something of a mystery, an unsolved chapter in wrestling history. Why did he really turn down the Hall of Fame? Would he ever change his mind? Does he know how much people still admire his work? No one has all the answers. But maybe that's okay. Because what Rick Martel left behind is more than a highlight reel. It's a reminder that impact doesn't always need applause. Sometimes it just needs respect. So here's a question for you. Do you think Rick Martel should accept the Hall of Fame invitation if it ever comes again? Or is his legacy stronger because he walked away? Let me know in the comments. I really want to hear your take. And hey, if this video gave you a new look at someone you thought you knew, or if it introduced you to a wrestling icon you hadn't thought about in years. Do me a favor, like the video, hit that subscribe button, and tap the bell so you don't miss what's coming next. I'm working toward reaching 1,000 subscribers, and every click helps keep stories like these alive. Rick Martel may never step into the Hall of Fame, but for those who watched him, those who learned from him, and those who still respect what he brought to the ring, he's already in a hall that matters more. Thanks for watching, and remember, sometimes the quietest stories leave the loudest echoes